Hi, good morning. Welcome. If you are on the phone, I'm actually unable to see that you've joined us. So if you're at a computer and able to click in, that would allow you to see my screen and become a little bit more interactive. Otherwise, if you can send me an email to let me know that you are online, then we will go ahead and get started. We'll do just the audio. Thank you. Hi, good morning, Gary. So glad you were able to join us this morning. If you can confirm that you can hear me and see my screen, there are a couple little features or settings, controls that would allow you to communicate with me. There's a little hand button you can press, raise to get my attention. You can also type in the chat field or through the ask a question field. Hi, Gary. I'm actually going to try to unmute you. I don't know if, hi.
Hello?
I can hear you. Hi, Gary. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to make sure, so I know you can hear me. That's great. Are you at a computer where you can see my screen?
I just see the audio box. I don't see anything else. Let's see. I see the ShelterBox new ambassador webinar with the tents in the background and the people. Is that
Yep.
what I should be?
Yep, that's going to be our presentation today. We're going to click through presentation, so the slides will change. But I wanted to introduce myself. So I am Cherie Sheets. I am pictured here in the middle. I believe you may have actually met my counterparts, Sarah Robinson and Bill Tobin, or at least one of them in Hamburg, correct?
Yep, I did.
All right, so yeah, I stayed back and held down the fort while they were at convention. I'm the volunteer and partnerships manager, and my role at the organization is to offer resources, support, and answers to our ambassador team, help to make connections within the community, to assist you in sharing the ShelterBox story. Bill Tobin, Rotary Relations Manager, he's about making sure our ambassadors are connected within the Rotary network, knowing how to merge your roles as a ShelterBox volunteer and as a Rotarian. He also works with Rotary leadership, so he is in contact with the district governors, DGEs, often to let them know what we're doing, what we're up to, and how their district can help. And then Sarah Robinson, Director of Fundraising and Partnerships, she supports us and helps our ambassadors, volunteers, as well as our other partners with ShelterBox and making sure that they're aware of our story. So
Great.
Without further ado, are you coming into this webinar with any questions I can answer up front, or do you want to wait until we cover some content first?
I think wait until we cover the content, and then I'll save my questions for the end.
Okay, great. Well, to keep from getting any audio feedback, I'm going to mute you now. There will be some natural pauses throughout the presentation. So when we get to those places, I'll take you back off mute and see if you have any questions at that time. To give you an idea of what we're going to cover today, so you might already have an idea of who ShelterBox is, but we're going to do a little review, what ShelterBox is and how we've changed, and what our goals are. I'm going to cover the role of the ambassador and a little bit how that differs from the other volunteer roles that we have at the organization. We're going to do a sample presentation. And this presentation is offered to the ambassadors as a template or boilerplate and can be modified to fit your style, or you could choose to throw it out the window altogether and just keep to your own style altogether. And then we're going to cover tools and resources, what we've created for our ambassadors to use to help support them in this role. And you see Q&A at the end, but really, like I said, we're going to have time throughout for questions and answers. So without further ado, who ShelterBox is and what we are. So as you already know, we're an innovative charity that hand delivers emergency shelter for families devastated by natural disaster and conflict. Our signature shelter boxes and shelter kits contain the tools to transform lives and rebuild communities. I would say that last set of words there, transform lives and rebuild communities. We focus on that a lot, and you're going to see that woven in throughout this presentation and a lot in the resources that we provide to the team. But we do things a little differently. So you might already be aware that we have response team members. I know you are, because you're hoping that you can apply to be one when those applications open up. And what makes us different is how they execute what we do. So while a lot of organizations who work in disaster relief will come in, go into a major city, drop aid, and start distributing it, these small teams of response team members, and coupled with our compact aid, they allow ShelterBox to reach these last mile communities. You know, we're seeking out the most vulnerable populations. We're trying to find those who would otherwise go unserved, and that's who we're distributing our aid to. And we've always done things a little differently, and again, it's what sets us apart, something I'm very proud of. In our work and the tone of how we tell our story, you're going to hear that urgency, and it's a strong urgency to do more and to reach more, because we know the need is great, it's growing, and there are families who need us. We are still very proud of the fact, though, that since 2000, we have been able to provide shelter to more than 1.5 million people in over 100 countries. And these numbers are something to be proud of. You know, we started out as a small little, out of a Rotary Club in Cornwall, England. They made it the Millennial Project. ShelterBox became its own separate organization in 2000. And being able to serve that many people is impactful. But what those stories also tell me now, having worked on this other side of it for a while now, is that for everyone we have served, there's been somebody we've had to say no to, because we just didn't have enough resources. So our goal is, we hope maybe 5-10 years, we hope to serve more than 1 million people a year. You've already heard me say the need is great and growing, and we want to be able to fill that gap, serve more people, reach more families. Those that we've served, those that we hope to serve, wouldn't be possible without our volunteers. I mentioned that ShelterBox was started out of a Rotary Club. It's a group of service club volunteers, group of Rotarians. And while the organization, after it was born, it's grown, our volunteers are still the lifeblood of ShelterBox. Our volunteers are doing everything from raising awareness to hand packing the aid before it's delivered. And then they are delivering it straight into the hands of families who need it. Our volunteers are at the heart of our mission. And this work wouldn't be possible without our partners as well. So we recognize the world of disaster response is cooperative, and the need for coordination at all levels of the organization is important. So from partners like Rotary International, who have named us their global project partner, to at the local level, agencies like Habitat for Humanity or Hand in Hand for Syria, we're creating strong partnerships so that we can be more effective and serve more people. So our ambassadors. I say that the ambassadors are the face and the voice of ShelterBox in and around your community. Ambassadors are meeting with organizations, service clubs like Rotary, religious or faith-based groups, professional corporate groups, youth. You're finding the audience that you feel is the easiest to speak to, you're the most comfortable with, you have the greatest network with, and you're introducing these audiences to the ShelterBox mission. You're telling your ShelterBox story, thus building awareness of our mission. And through these public engagements, raising awareness, you're also inspiring others to give to support our efforts. So what's in a ShelterBox? Well, when people hear ShelterBox, especially Rotarians, this is what we're picturing, right? We're picturing the green box, the tent, the 8 items. This is all packed in that box. This is our traditional ShelterBox. But what you probably heard in Hamburg, if you didn't, I'll tell you now that we've evolved beyond this box. And when we first started, we would send these green boxes to wherever we were called following a disaster. But because we do things differently, not only do we hand deliver this aid, but we go back into country and we ask what's working, what's not working, how can we do better? And it's in those conversations that we learned there really was no one solution for every disaster. So we had to go beyond just the green box. So now we try to get more specific into the disaster, like recently to Malawi after the cyclone, they had still water, they needed water purification. So we sent pallets of thirst aid stations because of still water increased risk of vector-borne disease. So we sent mosquito nets, pallets of mosquito nets, solar lights to have light. And then instead of a tent, we sent shelter kits. So now we'll break up the items in the box. We'll send pallets of these different 8 items. Maybe we're just sending pallets of tents because that's the actual need. We do still send the traditional ShelterBox where needed, but we've expanded to offer a suite of solutions. And whether it's coming in a green box, in a white bag, on a pallet, just a tent, what we're giving these folks is shelter. We're giving these families tools for self-recovery and resilience. Now, I mentioned already that our teams go back and ask questions to help us get better and do better. And one of the lessons we've learned just looking at the 8 items themselves and each individual aid item having the opportunity to get better and to evolve. An example of that is our water purification system. And when ShelterBox first started, we would actually give out bags of chlorine tablets. And we would go in and we would teach them to put chlorine tablet into so much water. We'd give them the appropriate ratio. And we would tell them that that equals clean water. Then when we came back, we learned that they were dumping a whole bag of chlorine tablets into what they thought was a whole lot of water. And they were chemically contaminating their water source. And we knew that wasn't going to work. We had to do better by these people. So we found what we thought was the next best solution, which is the bucket system you see pictured on the top left. Hang that up, put your dirty water in. There's a little pre-filter there at the top, but the dirty water, there's still contamination going through that blue PVC hose. And then you kind of get to this pump, kind of the tap system at the bottom. And the blue tap releases safe water, red tap releases contaminated water. And Gary, we would teach them this. And it seemed very instinctual to us because red, danger, right? We've kind of grown up, red, don't do that, stay away from that, that's dangerous. And it seemed to make sense then, but when we came back, we learned that what was most instinctual to them was to drink from the bottom, regardless of color. So they were still drinking contaminated water, and we knew we had to do better. So now enter the thirst aid station pictured on the bottom left. You hang that up, and you probably saw them in Hamburg. Open it up, kind of looks like there's a huge coffee filter in there. But by the time that water gets to the blue hose, it's clean. There's a valve at the top of the bulb. Clean water comes out, filters about a liter a minute. What I love about ShelterBox and what I have seen and believe is that if ever we were to learn that this wasn't cutting it, this was not enough, it was confusing, it's not doing the job, we would look for the next best thing and we would do it again and we would implement a new solution because we want to stand by our beneficiaries. We want to genuinely serve these people and help them in the journey of recovery. Now I've shared with you images and discussed items that we have on our shelves, but there are times when disaster strikes and these items that they need are not what we keep stocked in our 10 warehouses around the globe. And when this happens, it's appropriate and we can obtain the right vendor relationships. We will bring in additional items. We'll procure items. Like here in Syria, we procured mattresses, plastic for windows, and stoves. Because in that crisis, that's what these families needed most. Now, this doesn't happen in every deployment, but again, where the need is there, and the vendor relationship exists, ShelterBox is going to try to meet that need beyond what's on our shelves. One of the most popular items that we procure are building materials that accompany our shelter kits. So corrugated iron, procured a lot, lumber, bamboo. So you can see the tarp of our shelter kit kind of blending in, camouflaged into the sky there, and the fixings nailing the tarp down. So that's what comes in our shelter kit. The wood, the corrugated iron, that doesn't. That's procured additionally once we get into country. This particular picture, actually, I like speaking to because this is Cameroon. And initially on this deployment, we sent tents. But because of the climate, that was only going to work for a short term. So this speaks to, again, really wanting to serve the people. Because when we learned that that wasn't going to be a long-term solution, we followed up that distribution with shelter kits and procured these additional items so that they had mud brick homes for a longer term stay. And Gary, it's this innovation, this urgency and desire to serve that allowed ShelterBox to respond 18 different times in 2018. There were 8 countries of conflict, 10 natural disasters, a total of 17 countries reached. And it's 17 because there are countries that we had to respond to more than once. Philippines is an example. We've responded to the Philippines now 25 times since 2000. But total in 2018, we served 210,000 people. And if you remember back at the beginning, I said we have a goal, hopefully within 5 to 10 years, to serve 1 million people a year. And 210. That's where we were at 2018. So you can see the need for our volunteers to be out in the communities telling the story to help bring awareness and raise funds for additional resources. Why that is so crucial. Now at this time, I've completed the first portion of the presentation. Gary, I'm going to take you off mute and see if you have any questions from the first segment.
It's very insightful. Some of it I was already aware about. I knew that ShelterBox was started originally by a group of Rotarians in the UK, and that it's now its actual own independent entity, which is great. Yeah, I just had a question about the partnerships. Exactly, like you said, you partnership with the Syrian Hands and Habitat for Humanity. How do those partnerships work, or what do you do together as a partner?
Absolutely.
If you just use Habitat Humanity, for example, how would you work together and collaborate with them?
Yeah, Gary, absolutely. So actually, both of those examples are 2 totally different types of partnerships. So when we go in country, often other organizations are on the ground. So we're going to start with the Habitat for Humanity example. If our response teams are on the ground, they're going to attend what's called a cluster meeting. That cluster meeting is going to include leadership from all the different organizations that are there following that disaster, Red Cross, Habitat, and we talk as a group as to where one of our services leaves and another one can pick up. So we are a good fit for Habitat for Humanity because we have these building kits, we have these shelter kits, and it's building material. And oftentimes they'll say, all right, well, if you provide this many, then we'll come behind and here's what we're going to do for these families. And that's how we partner. We do a lot of work with Habitat in country because they can come up behind us and provide a more, even longer term stay than what we're offering. So we start with the immediate disaster response and they aid in the recovery phase. For Hand in Hand for Syria, that's different because they are representing ShelterBox where we can't be on the ground. In Syria, Iraq, Ethiopia, the Lake Chad Basin, we're currently in these areas and they are too dangerous for response team members to actually go in country. Our ops team will go in and meet with these partners, and the partners actually go through, I consider, an equally rigorous evaluation process as our response team members because they are representing ShelterBox. And we need to ensure that they are distributing the aid, taking care of the beneficiaries, storing the aid, just as we would to our guidelines and expectations. We bring on these partners after we say, getting to know them, is it a good fit? Is it going to work? Are they going to be able to execute as we would? Maybe 6 months, a year of evaluation. And then following the the start of that partnership, like Hand in Hand for Syria, we're checking in with them. Our ops team is going to meet with them to make sure that the partnership is still working. And then, yeah, they receive our aid when we ship new groups of aid to them. They store it, and then as they have families at the different displaced camps, then they will train them on how to use the aid and will make sure that they are receiving it just as we would receive it. And so that's two examples of different partners.
I see. So that you just answered what was going to be my next question about the countries of conflict. So you actually don't go into those. You have the Hands on Hands Syria represent ShelterBox. Because I was just wondering, as far as safety and all that,
Yeah.
how that was managed in that kind of situation.
Yeah, when we first started going to Iraq, and we're not currently operating in Iraq, we just concluded a long distribution or partnership there. We actually did send response team members. We have a lot of our response team members have a military background. In fact, one of our response team members in California had actually just come back from deployment from Iraq when he started the SRT process, and then he was chosen, and his first deployment was back to Iraq. So, and it was because he kind of knew the area. And at some point, it became too dangerous to send. So we then switched to a partnership. Hand in Hand for Syria is obviously Syria. We also do a lot of work with IDEA, I believe is the acronym. ACTED. These organizations work to keep that barrier so that we're safe, but they also already have the in-country relationships. They know how to navigate that political mess that's there, and they're the best people on the ground to do the work.
Has ShelterBox ever gone into North Korea by any chance?
We have. Well, we've sent aid to North Korea. I couldn't tell you I've heard SRT stories, but we sent Flex 3 tents to North Korea during a very cold winter.
Okay, because I do a lot of humanitarian work, mostly for food security in North Korea, and I'm in contact with all the leadership there. Everybody from the trade minister to the foreign affairs minister, pretty much the whole crew over there. So yeah, if there's any activity going in that part of the world, I can definitely play a role in that, because I have email access to all my partners there as well. So email contact them, because most of the outside world, they don't even have email contact.
Right.
They're not allowed to contact whoever they want outside, and you have to be on a special list. Yeah, you have to be on a special list to even communicate with somebody in country there. So yeah, I was just wondering, so that's good to know.
Yeah, I would say we had a response there. I feel like it's been within the last 5 years. So that, and it is always helpful when a prospective response team member has those relationships and has that value to the organization.
Okay.
All right,
you know
Gary,
what? I do remember that 5 years ago, because I think I got my club, if I remember, involved with the yes, you're right. Yeah, I remember that was a few summers back, 4 or 5 summers back ago, because I remember talking to Dr. Jung about that. Okay, cool, great.
So I'm going to put you back on mute, and then the next portion is that sample presentation I mentioned. A lot of it is going to be review of the information we covered, because this is if you were standing in front of an audience hearing about ShelterBox for the first time. So this is what we've created. This presentation was created at the start of this year. It's very comprehensive in regards to the history, the Rotary partnership. It's also very Rotary focused. I just did an upload of a non-Rotary version where it mentions Rotary, but it's not necessarily really speaking to that partnership for anybody that's not a Rotarian. That's not going to add any value to them. So we do have 2 versions of this exact presentation. Again, as I said in the beginning, this is something that we offer. There are great points in here, but many of our ambassadors choose to find a story that means the most to them, and they end up more speaking to stories in the field when it comes to doing their presentation. So that it does this comprehensive presentation, but we offer it. because there are still Rotary clubs out there, or maybe there's clubs that heard about us but don't really know the changes that we made in our operations. And so we have this as that starting place. Now, at this point, if you're getting up in front of a podium, in front of a Rotary club for the first time, I would think that you would want to reach out to me first, because you want to know, is this club engaged with ShelterBox before? What's their previous giving history? Am I celebrating them today in their support, or is this really getting them engaged again for the first time? So if you've got this up on your screen at that Rotary Club, you already know what kind of presentation you're having with them. So in this example, they're hearing about ShelterBox either for the first time or it's been a long time. And you're going to try and get this audience to picture what it's like for our beneficiaries. Imagine in a moment, a matter of minutes, losing everything. Your roof, your walls, your safety, your shelter, your home is gone. Now imagine someone stepping in to help and providing hope. At ShelterBox, we look to give families back that stable place so that they can begin to rebuild their lives and their communities. Who is ShelterBox? Well, we are a cutting-edge international charity that hand-delivers emergency shelter to families devastated by natural disaster and conflict. Right now, there are about 85 million people around the world who are displaced by disaster. Every day, landslides, hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, and conflict are tearing homes and families apart. Of the 85 million that I mentioned, the vast majority of them, over 65 million, have been displaced by force. Sadly, these numbers are only expected to rise. By the year 2050, experts estimate that 200 million people will be displaced worldwide. Well, let's take a moment to understand the scale of this crisis that is affecting families around the globe. Every minute of every day, 20 people are forcibly displaced, driven by conflict to flee their homes. If I'm up here for 20 minutes, that means 400 people will be forced from their homes. By the time this meeting ends, if we take up an hour, it's 1,200 people who will be forced to flee. While ShelterBox originally began responding to only natural disasters, we have been able to take what we've learned and apply our knowledge to help shelter refugees around the globe. At ShelterBox, we are committed to providing tools and supporting recovery so families can start to rebuild following their worst day ever. Our vision is a world where no family is without shelter when disaster strikes. And this all started when a group of Rotarians noticed a gap in disaster relief. After disasters, people were bringing in medicine and food, but there was no one solution for shelter. Being Rotarians, they saw a problem and they came up with a solution by thinking of what people would need to survive following a disaster and packing those 8 items in a green box. They made it their millennial project, and a year later, the organization ShelterBox began. This is our traditional shelter box. It contains everything from a family-sized tent to water purification carrier to cooking equipment and solar lights. And after many years of working in disaster relief, we've learned a thing or two. And the biggest thing that we've learned is that there is no one solution to every disaster. So we now have a suite of solutions that we can provide. We still do use the traditional shelter box, but we'll also send pallets of these individualized items. Depending on the specific need after the disaster, that could be mosquito nets, solar lights, water filtration units, anything that is needed in that particular disaster. But whether we're sending a green box, tent, white bags, what we give is shelter. We are giving people tools for self-recovery and resilience. Like our Luminate, for example, our solar lamp that's providing a light in the darkness. It is safety at night. as women and girls travel to latrines and can be at risk of attack in the darkness. It's protection from wild animals in tropical countries. It's a way to cook, work, do homework by, bring back some normalcy when a way of life has been turned upside down. Protection from disease. Water supplies often become contaminated after a major disaster. And as infrastructure and sanitation systems are destroyed, our water purification systems ward off these waterborne diseases. Vector-borne disease also increases after disaster. So our solution to aid this problem is our mosquito net, which prevent malaria, dengue fever, and the Zika virus, all real threats in the countries that we serve. But in looking at how our organization has and will continue to evolve, one of the most recent additions to the ShelterBox solution is the shelter repair kit. These shelter kits contain plastic sheeting, basic tools, rope, and fixings that enable families to rapidly provide their own shelter or make repairs to their damaged houses in the aftermath of a disaster. Our shelter kits allow people to remain on their home site, secure their possessions, and repair what's theirs. Sometimes people haven't lost their whole home though, maybe just walls or a roof are damaged. And when ShelterBox first started, those families would have been passed up because they would not have been considered the most vulnerable. So with the ShelterBox shelter kit solution, we give them a way now to waterproof and windproof their home. We can serve more because of this shelter kit. Also, there are times when there isn't enough room for a tent in a crowded urban area. And when that originally happened, again, these families would be passed up because our aid wouldn't have been most appropriate. Adding the shelter kit is a great provision for people that are pictured like here, where it was too crowded to place a tent, but they still needed shelter. Though there are enough materials in our shelter kit to create standalone structures like this one here in the Philippines. So in addition to the kit, we'll procure items like bamboo, lumber, corrugated iron to provide a family the materials they need to rebuild their home. After seeing our gear, something a lot of people wonder is how we get it there. And the answer really is by any means possible. Using resources within the local community, we work to get aid into last mile communities that might otherwise go unserved. Not pictured here is the response team member who has already trained this community leader on how to use the aid they've just received. And that's what sets us apart. Our heavily trained volunteers don't just drop aid in a major city and leave. No, they are landing in country, they're meeting with Rotarians, community leaders, government officials. They're having these conversations to determine who the most vulnerable families are. Once that's decided, then they're talking to these community leaders and they're using the local community to help arrange transportation of aid from port to person. Then they're training the community leaders how to use the aid so they can go forth and train the community. That's when they leave. But they come back. There's a special team of response team members that do monitoring and evaluation deployments, and they go back in and they ask what worked, what didn't, and how can we do better? And it's these very important questions that have allowed ShelterBox to evolve, to offer a suite of solutions, better aid, and to serve more people. Now, Gary, this is actually an optional slide. This is a video that's embedded into the presentation. It's 2 minutes and 21 seconds. Now, if I play it for you today, the audio, for some reason, I can't get the audio to play for you. I'd be the only one hearing it. So we're going to skip it, but I'm going to send you a link to it so you can watch it following this presentation today. But this is a video of our response team members talking about their work in their own words, what it means to go out in the country and some of the challenges they face. If you were to use this in your presentation or you wanted to play this, obviously you have the option to do so. If for some reason you didn't have the audiovisual ability to play it, you would skip this and maybe follow up with individuals directly and send them this link. So how is this all possible? Well, ShelterBox Aid is sponsored by generous donors from around the world, including from within the United States. There's individuals, Rotary clubs, other service clubs, businesses, and foundations that are making monetary contributions to help sponsor the aid and further our efforts. Additionally, we couldn't do our life-saving work without our volunteers. The help of our amazing network of volunteers, the ShelterBox mission is shared with communities around the globe. We have the ambassador who goes out into the community, the voice and the face of ShelterBox, sharing their ShelterBox story, engaging the community, raising awareness, and inspiring others to give. We have our ShelterBox advocate. They are your social media gurus. They are sharing ShelterBox updates and news and needs with their network on the many social media channels that ShelterBox is on. You have the ShelterBox Changemaker. This is somebody who's great at event planning and has the ability to plan fundraisers, execute, and help our efforts that way. Then there's the Rotary Club Champion. This is somebody that absolutely supports what we do, but maybe doesn't have the capacity to do the other things that I've already mentioned, but they want to bring the ShelterBox story to their club. So they act as the representative for their club specifically, so that their club can stay up to date on the news and needs of ShelterBox. We have our response team members, our boots on the ground, those who are going, asking the important question, putting the aid directly in the hands of our beneficiaries, and then following up and making sure that what we're doing is working. Our volunteers are at the heart of our mission. Lastly, we couldn't do our work without Rotary. Rotary giving makes up a significant portion of our revenue, yes, but Rotary clubs also provide invaluable logistic support to our field operations team. Rotarians are often the first point of contact for the ShelterBox response team members when they arrive in country. A couple of key examples I have of where that really helped us, and they help us all the time, but these stories are unique. So in Peru, there was a Rotarian contact when we got on the ground, and he ended up introducing us to the First Lady and Prime Minister, and they ended up aiding in our response. Another story, we have the Philippines. I mentioned that we've been there 25 times. Well, the Rotarian, one of the Rotarians who was assisting in this particular response is a beer distributor, and because of his connections, was able to get us through customs quicker. Both of these examples, these Rotarians were critical in helping us get to the beneficiaries faster. Our supporters make the work of ShelterBox possible. Together, we are transforming lives and rebuilding communities. We are proud to be named again Rotary International's Global Project Partner in Disaster Relief, just renewed for another 3 years. And because of our work in war-torn countries, ShelterBox is actually nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize both in 2018 and in 2019. And it's because we're striving to keep families and communities together, increasing feelings of stability, togetherness during a time of unprecedented global conflict and displacement. You may already know about the watchdog organizations who monitor and rate charities on their performance. But because of our strong financial stewardship and transparency, we've been awarded the Platinum status from GuideStar and a 4-star rating from Charity Navigator. And these are the highest designations from each organization. So how can you help? You'll follow us on social media to stay up to date with our work around the globe. You can learn more on our website, and you can get involved. You can be a hero club. Starting July 1st, 2019, ShelterBox USA is actually making it easier to be a ShelterBox hero. By giving $1 $1,000, $3,000, or $5,000 within a single Rotary year, your Rotary Club can be acknowledged for being a ShelterBox hero. And that is a club that is committed to helping in ongoing disaster relief, helping ShelterBox keep our shelves stocked for the next big disaster. Together, ShelterBox and Rotary can help more families, but we need your help. And I invite you to join me in being a part of this important effort. On behalf of those we serve, but we may never meet. And thank you for allowing me to come and share my ShelterBox story with you today. Are there any questions? Now, Gary, built into the presentation, the slide deck, is a deployment map. It's one of the first organic questions that comes is, where are you currently working? So every month I look at our operations and I create a deployment map. And this map is as of the first of the month. So this is our June map where we're working. We've been in Syria since 2012. The Lake Chad Basin, Nigeria, Cameroon since 2015. Somaliland, we have been active there, I want to say for a year, a little over probably. Ethiopia, we're just coming up on a year. These are all conflict areas right now, but we are coming up on hurricane seasons, and we've seen a lot of activity in around the Philippines, in around Southern Africa with our weather. We just wrapped up a deployment in Malawi. Definitely some tropical storms happening over there, cyclone activity. So we're constantly monitoring that. Now, once people see this map and you let people know where we're working, and as an ambassador, you are informed and you would be able to speak to this map and know what work we're doing. So the next question that usually comes is, well, how did you make the decision to deploy here and not to other places? Especially with hurricane season happening right now, we know that weather is going to pick up in the United States as well. So people want to know, where are we going to be? Can they expect ShelterBox to show up? So built into this slide deck is our decision to deploy criteria. And on the script it reads, ShelterBox is thoughtful in execution. Our team looks at everything from what sort of response is being mounted by the local government, the capacity of the community to self-recover, to whether or not our aid is even appropriate. There are all of our decision to deploy criteria on the screen, and I won't read all of them to you. I'm going to highlight a couple of them, the ones that I speak to most often. But built into the script, there's an elaboration of each of these factors so that you as the ambassador feel equipped to answer to any of them if you were to be called upon on any of those specific ones. But I'm going to take a moment with you, Gary, to talk about specific ones that play big roles. And I want to focus on ShelterBox in the United States. We've responded in the United States a handful of times. We were there at Hurricane Katrina, Superstorm Sandy in 2012. We were there at Hurricane Harvey. There were times where within the United States, one, international disaster relief aid was requested. That's government response. We are invited in. The other factor for those was that there was a gap in shelter. The local and already existing organizations at that time were exhausted, and they, like Red Cross, FEMA, they were unable to meet the need. When there's that gap, you're going to see ShelterBox show up. Additionally, at that time, we weren't responding heavily to other areas outside of these disasters, so we had the capacity ourselves. ShelterBox resources allowed us at that time to respond to these disasters. Let's fast forward a little bit. So in 2018, the United States experienced a few disasters. Hawaii had the volcano, the flooding. We saw Hurricane Florence in the Carolinas, and we saw Hurricane Michael down in Florida. And those were devastating disasters for those that experienced it. But now let's look at the decision to deploy criteria through ShelterBox eyes. So at the time, our ShelterBox resources, we were currently deployed to other countries with far significant damages, home loss, and coupled with those countries did not have the local capacity to recover. They did not have organizations like FEMA and the Red Cross they may or may not have had was exhausted. So they had a bigger gap. But another big factor we look at when comparing our response to the United States to other countries is the Global Development Index rating. So it's a rating scale. You can go online, find it today if you want it, and it rates 189 countries on their infrastructure, economy, and their resilience, their ability to self-recover. On that rating scale, 1 being the best, most resilient, the United States is currently number 13, and the Philippines, where we responded 25 times, is 113th. We were actually in the Philippines at the time that Hurricane Michael and Florence were hitting. You're going to see ShelterBox today responding to the countries on the lower end of that scale. Indonesia, where we responded following those earthquakes, 116th at that time. We're also looking at type of aid. And I'm going to use the California wildfires from 2018 for this example. So we do have a good working relationship here in the United States with FEMA. And at the time that the Paradise fires hit 2018, FEMA actually told ShelterBox kindly, this wasn't, like I said, a good relationship, but they said, ShelterBox, your aid is not the best aid for the families that we're serving. They had elderly people, and putting them outside in tents was not the best solution. The best solution for those beneficiaries was a voucher system, the FEMA voucher system. So when you look at the countries in the lower end of that scale, they don't have a FEMA, they don't have voucher systems, they don't have homeowners insurance policies. They don't have the local capacity that we have here in the United States. There was the earthquake that happened in Anchorage. And while I don't believe many lost homes, there's that iconic picture of that street just being completely divided. Our economic structure, infrastructure, we were able to get that repaired within a week or two. And that speaks to our country's resiliency. And the countries that we respond to, it often takes a lot of time to get the infrastructure up and running. Actually, it's one of the challenges our response team members run into is getting the aid to the people because their streets and roads are damaged. And I'm going to take you off mute now, Gary. I've covered a lot of information, but I wanted to make sure I covered this information with you because it's critical. You are going to be asked these questions if you're presenting ShelterBox. So any questions about what I've covered right now?
I think it was well said, and points well made about like some of the underdeveloped countries. I've lived in Asia for over 12 years, so I'm very quite accustomed to how slow and how inefficient certain things can be when it comes to government mandates and things of that nature. So I could only imagine, like in a disaster, what the situation would be.
And that's often why we work with Rotarians, because Rotarians know how to get stuff done. So the government does have to invite us in, and we have to have cooperation with them at every level. Like first the invitation, then getting through customs. But oftentimes, once their part's done, it's the Rotarians who are helping us execute.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. As far as, I'm just curious, as far as the funding goes, like fundraisers, how frequent do you organize these fundraisers? Because it was one of your earlier screens that you were showing me where they actually, I can't remember the title.
The Change Maker.
Yeah, the Change Maker. How frequent and where are the fundraisers done? How are those? How would that be different, I guess, from what I would be doing as an ambassador? Would there be some overlap with that?
No, that's a great question. Honestly, we have, I think, one official change maker who's in our system. We just recently rolled out these new positions this January. I think the change makers are actually more informal. Those are going to be your students, your high schools. I want to do a fundraiser for ShelterBox, and they're the ones. That's what they can offer, right? They can coordinate a local event or a series of events and raise money, but maybe.
That could even be a Rotaract project, right?
Rotaract, Interact. I get contacted a lot from people who just want a short-term fundraising project. These are
Okay.
people that aren't speakers. Maybe they don't want to talk so much as they want to just put it in action. They want the story to tell itself, and they're going to bring people in that are going to support the mission. An ambassador is working to obtain speaking opportunities. You're hoping that through those opportunities and through those presentations that the audience is then compelled to give. So instead of organizing a fundraiser, which you can do, some of our ambassadors host what's called Shine events, which is like a little informal dinner where you bring people to your house and you tell the ShelterBox story. And you're hoping that your audience, your guests are compelled to give. But your focus really is talking to audiences and hoping they give instead of coordinating these massive events where you're raising funds. I think that's the main difference.
Okay. Okay. And then what is the current funding level of ShelterBox right now? I mean, I guess or to clarify my question is, what is the capacity that you're at? I mean, let's say there's 5 disasters that strike in a 2-month period. Can ShelterBox handle 5 large scale, like an earthquake, a typhoon, a flood, a volcanic eruption, whatever? I mean, what is the exact capacity of ShelterBox at this time?
Well, Gary, that's where we're going to talk about the difference between our affiliates. So ShelterBox USA is an affiliate where we're fundraising and raising awareness. ShelterBox operations all out of the UK. I am not privy, or I have not done, I guess, the back work to see the budget. So that's not readily shared with me. I can go find it if I go to their website.
Well, that's okay. It was just more of a general. I mean, it's
yeah,
fine.
I would say so. So right now, let's go back to the deployment map. So right now we are in these countries, and some of that it means like we have aid there, and we're in planning phases for next distributions. Like Somaliland, we're hoping to get another 1,000 to them shortly. Ethiopia, we're planning another phase, I think, of another 1,100. And then in the Nigeria, Cameroon, it's just ongoing. What can we send them? Syria, we've done a total of 50,000 families. I think we're looking to send another 1,000 or so. So it's like 1,000 sets of things at a time. If so natural disasters, obviously things can happen. I've seen as many as, so these are pretty much always on the map, but I've seen this lit up with also Indonesia and Philippines at the same time. They had the earthquake and the typhoon at the same time. With Iraq on here as well. I mean, there are times where I know that we are stretched and we can't go, but it seems that we can cover our conflict areas and I'd say 2 to 3 natural disasters at a time if I'm throwing a number in the dark. Throwing a number in the dark. I would say that's what it is. And really, it kind of works out. I mean, there are always disasters, and there are some that we won't end up responding to. We'll monitor them, but we're looking for, we're also looking for the local capacity. So sometimes after monitoring, we'll find out that they're going to be able to self-recover. But I feel like it works out that where we need to be, we can be there. That's my best response.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good answers. Yeah. Okay. And then, how many ambassadors do you currently have on staff at the moment?
Actively, I would say 245 across the United States.
Okay. And do you currently have any in Hawaii? Hawaii is where I'm based right now.
We have I believe she's a former SRT. Her name is Reese Mates. And that actually brings me to, I'm going to jump to tools and resources. So I want to share with you the ambassador map. We'll take a look at what's in Hawaii. So Reese is in Hilo. Hilo? I feel bad. I'm so bad with the Hawaii vowels.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm still learning too. Yeah, Hilo's the big island where the volcano is. I'm actually in the Honolulu area on this. I don't know if you can see. Can you see my cursor? Yep, I'm there. That's where I'm at. So
okay,
a little bit west, actually a little bit west of that, but yeah, not about in that general vicinity.
Okay.
Yep.
So just so
Pretty much we have
you
the
know,
cursor now. That's where I'm at. Yeah. Waipahu.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that helps a lot because I know was struggling to get to the other islands.
hmm
You being in Honolulu in a major area helps. How long have you been in Hawaii for?
Only since May, actually. So I was in
Okay.
Malaysia for about 5 years before this, and yeah, so I'm still learning my way around myself. So,
Okay.
um,
Well, when I follow up from our call today, I'm going to introduce you to Laura Helmer. Laura actually just went to the district conference and has some extensive background on ShelterBox and Rotary in that district. Uh, we we know we had some disasters in early 2018 there. There was flooding, there's volcanoes, and ShelterBox did not respond. It seemed based off our assessments that they were able to self-recovery. But there was a lot of questions about that. And so the relationships in Hawaii right now is something we are working to strengthen and rebuild.
okay,
I want you to be aware of that, and Laura can connect you and assist you with more of that background and get
okay,
you in contact with the district governor as well, which will be crucial.
great. Yeah. So,
So, yeah, go ahead.
okay, yeah, I guess my next question would be, um, if I to execute this, to actually move forward. I did this
Okay.
webinar today. So, from this point on, how do I move to the next step as far as, as far as connecting the Rotary clubs, that's not a problem for me.
Okay.
By profession, I'm a social worker, so this is actually really aligned well to what I'm already doing in the field because I'm already well connected, with actually I'm here, I'm working in a house, I help people families who are struggling here find affordable housing. I think that's kind of interesting in one of the most expensive states or actually the most expensive state in the United States. But so I think this aligns well because I'm already, I will be actually connected quite well with a lot of the community resources here, both government um, down to NGO level. So I think, yeah, it's going to align very well with this because I can already go out and reach out to a lot of these other entities and introduce them to ShelterBox, which I think will be fantastic.
Well, no, great. I'm glad to know it's a natural fit. That's always very helpful.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you the additional resources and then I'm going to tell you how you're going to get your hands on them.
Okay.
So this is the ambassador portal. This is going to be part of your next steps, right? So you're going to need to be able to access the presentation. And here we not only have that presentation, but we've got other tools. Here's our featured tools. In addition to
So,
doing presentation. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, is this the presentation that you just did with me that I'll be doing that with the same, using the same slides with the,
You can do that.
okay.
Yeah. And it comes with a script. You don't have to memorize all of that.
Okay. Okay.
And that presentation is right here.
I'm a Toastmaster, so I'm sure after a while, it will kind of register in my mind. We're doing it a few times.
Yeah, and you'll see, so the script, it's very much outlined how I said it, but I like public speaking myself, so I add my own flair to it or try to tell it in my own way. So you will see some variances, but the bulk of the information is all in the script. And that can be accessed here. So ambassadors, your tools, ShelterBox 101 PowerPoint. You click that, it's going to take you to the page where the script and the PowerPoint can be downloaded.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was going to tell you too, in addition to having these presentations and speaking to audiences, we like to equip ambassadors with other tools that they can use when talking to individuals, like sell a home, give a home. If you know a real estate agent, we have a program that we're just launching where they can say, I will give so much of my commission, and it's varying levels depending on what they want to give, of that sale to ShelterBox. So we have that and individual giving programs. So you're going to see different things highlighted here, and they are just optional tools. I just wanted to set that expectation for you. But here's that map that I was telling you about. You're going to find that here every month, and it'll be updated as I update it. We have questions and answers regarding the Rotary Disaster Response Fund. Here's where you're going to find disaster information. Anytime we offer specialized tools or information, it's going to be there. But there's other tools here, templates, how-to guides, how to build a tabletop shelter kit, display ideas. A lot of what you need is right here. We also have Rotary resources getting started for anybody that's maybe new to Rotary. And ShelterBox is a good way to learn a little bit about both and how to merge those roles together. I showed you the map, and this is updated every month. So next month you'll be plotted on here in Honolulu area, and it represents, the icons represent what kind of equipment that the ambassador has. So Reese, we know, has at least, it's a little totem box, maybe doesn't have a tent, but has some demo equipment. Our other ambassador here, who I don't believe Anna Webb is active anymore. I've not worked with her in the over 18 months that I've been here, but maybe she's still telling our story in some capacity, so I keep her on our map. But it doesn't look like she has any equipment. So you starting off, you would start off as the gray circle with a white man running, and that just means starting off you don't have any demo equipment. As you get going and you have more presentations, display opportunities, I can send you all the goods that you need. And then these guys, the icon with actual ShelterBox logo says they have equipment and they have a tent. And ultimately, we would want to make sure, and I know we have something already on the island, so I may not even have to ship it to you. I believe that Laura has a connection where you could just obtain that from out of storage, and they would be glad to hand that off to you.
Can you put me in contact with the lady in Hilo?
Yeah, I'll introduce you. So as we go through the onboarding process, I'm going to introduce you to not only people who are familiar with the Hawaii Rotary relationship, but also with the nearby ambassador. For sure, Reese is her name, and she's the green circle, right, white square. I probably won't copy Anna because I don't believe her to be active right now, but for sure, Laura and Reese. Want to show you the asset bank. This is a public domain. This is where you can go right now to receive up-to-date field stories and photos. And this is us having that conversation, what's working, what's not, how did ShelterBox help you? You can go get inspired and even use this as your speaking point. As a Toastmaster, you might very well easily be able to adapt this into your presentation. And then lastly, this is a closed Facebook ShelterBox group. This is for our ambassadors once they finish onboarding. And here we share access to tools, successes, different styles. Here's my colleague Sarah sharing the annual report that you can get online. We have ambassadors sharing what they're doing with ShelterBox, how they're sharing ShelterBox. We inspire one another. And then somewhere on here, yes, we share stories from the field. So every week I try to go into the asset bank that I showed you, find a story that really speaks to what we're doing and share it here so that you all can feel the inspiration as well. So I've covered that, and I know I'm already over time, so let me jump to our next steps so that you know how to get these tools into your fingertips. Okay. So as I mentioned, I'm going to follow up with you. I'm going to be asking you, and I ask all our volunteers, our ambassadors, to complete a background screening, and this is for the purpose of, because we share proprietary information. When you contact me and ask me if a club is donated before, that's donor information, and we want to be sure that we're protecting our donors. So that's why we also have you sign a confidentiality agreement, because you're using this information just for the purpose of strengthening your relationships with these clubs and nothing else. We have you sign a release of liability, because if you are tugging and lugging our equipment around, it's pretty heavy, and we want you to be aware of the risk and not want you to get hurt. Yeah. Once I have the background screening back with the 2 forms, then I send you a second follow-up email, and it provides you links to the tools that I just showed you. It does a further and more in-depth introduction to the ambassadors that I would think would be great resources for you. And then I set expectations just on the next few steps. Lastly, I'll be in touch with you in 30, 60, 90 days to check in, see how it's going, if I can help you. But you are welcome to email me, call me anytime, because I'm always a resource to you. So don't wait for me to check in if you've got questions. Okay. All right, Gary, what else do I have?
I'm not sure if I have your phone number. Will you send that all to me? Or
absolutely, it's going to be in my email signature.
Okay, perfect. And then for the background screening documents, the confidentiality agreement and release of liability, you're going to send me those by
Yes.
email as well. And then
Yep,
and then I will send those back to you, right?
absolutely. The online background screening, or the background screening can be done online. You can click through it. The forms are attachments, and those will be coming to you all within the next 30 minutes.
Okay, so then once that's done, there'll be a follow-up email, and then you will provide me the resources that I need to get started, and
Absolutely.
then we'll start and then pretty much I'll be good to go. It sounds like, right?
Yep, I think so.
Okay. I think that's all of my questions. There's something else that seems like I wanted to ask you, and I can't think of it. Oh well. That
Don't
always
worry about
happens.
it. If you think of it, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll be happy to address it.
Oh yeah. Well, I think one question I would also be interested in being. I think it was a Rotary Club champion. Is that what it is? The one that goes back and keeps my Rotary Club updated because I'm
So as an
already.
ambassador, yeah, as an ambassador, you kind of already are that person. So you'll be that
Okay.
person for your club. I
I
don't
mean,
need to tack on another title.
yeah, I've already been chairing the disaster relief committee for my club for the past few years. So I think this is this will help kind of mainstream what we've been trying to do. And my club has previously supported ShelterBox. I think it was, didn't you go? You went into Nepal too when they had the earthquake, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we supported a tent then at that time, a whole ShelterBox, and then did you guys go into Japan when they had the tsunami?
But I can tell you.
I'm
You can
sorry.
go to the asset. I said I can tell you because that one I'm not as familiar offhand. But guess what we can do? I'm going to show you a cool feature here. We can go into disasters and conflicts and search by country. This means if there's a folder here, that means that we've been to that country.
Oh, cool.
So Japan. We were in Japan in 2011.
Yeah, okay, during the tsunami. Okay, then for this portal that you're in now, you
Mhm.
will send me the link in your second email, correct?
Yep. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
will I have a login and will I need to set up a password to get into it, or will I be able
So
to?
this is actually a public domain. It will be a live link. You can go straight to it. In fact, you could go there today. I have no problem sending you this link in the follow-up email today and
Okay,
access this information. No login needed. This site, the Ambassador portal, is a login password site, and I set that up for you once the background screening is completed. And the reason why it's locked is because you can go into activities and data, and quarterly I update the Rotary Club giving information so you can kind of see where your district falls for that quarter. And because there's a massive amount of donor data, we keep it locked.
okay. And yeah, my final question is, can I get, oh, two more questions. And I think, can I get I think it said this was being recorded. Can I get a recording of this webinar so I can go back and review it if I need to? Which I probably will at some point, at least parts of it.
Absolutely, it is recorded. So I should be able to have that to you in my follow-up email to you today. The
Awesome.
recording should be processed by then.
And my last final question, as I promised, can you send me a ShelterBox T-shirt? So when I go out and do these presentations, the name is on me.
So I don't actually have any apparel in-house, but on the portal, there's the ShelterBox store. We work through Queensboro, and there is an array of branded both. You can do just ShelterBox, or you can do ShelterBox and Rotary. Here, let's see if it'll take us there.
Well, I can just order one from there, right?
Yep, and that actually is on our Facebook page as well. At the very top, we have the ShelterBox store. It's Queensboro. The link is here, so we should be going there twice. But you can see we've got polos, different variations of polos. You can also shop by apparel. So we have tons of different options that you can purchase here from the site.
Awesome. Okay, great. So I'll go there and I'll get a couple shirts then for it. Well, wonderful.
Well,
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and yeah, learned a lot today. I feel more charged up and actually I'm more excited about the application process for the response team opening up. So I hope that will be soon rather than
I hope
sooner rather
so as
than later.
well. And
Yeah.
honestly, I don't have additional information. They keep us pretty much in the dark here for ShelterBox USA. What we'll get notified of, we'll be notified maybe a month before it's going to open with their intentions of when they plan to open up applications. We will then be notified when it goes live. There we'll share it on the Ambassador Facebook page, probably also share it to anybody who directly who has said, I'm interested in this. Last year, they opened up applications in October, and it looks like we're probably following that same timeline, not 100% sure. And then once you start the process, you're actually managed all through them. You'll do an assessment. It's really crazy question. Well, they're situational questions where you just don't feel like there is a right answer. And then depending on how you do throughout the process, you'll move forward and you're communicated with. And then they become your main point of contact for that process.
Okay.
But we
Okay,
will
great.
keep you in the loop. Yeah, my role is to just let you know when it opens and then to help bridge any communication that you need help with.
Sounds good. Okay, great. So then I'll wait for your follow-up email and then I'll get those screening forms back to you ASAP.
That sounds great, Gary. Thank you for the additional time. I know we went over today. I'll be talking to you soon. Have a great day.
You too. Okay, cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.